Hello, viewers. Welcome to Africa and Beyond Television Network. And this morning, let us talk about President Nelson Chamisa. The major question is, did God abandon Nelson Chamisa? Another question is, was God not in it? Is God not in it? Was Chamisa supposed to snub the elections? Was boycotting going to create a political crisis? I'm going to explain some things here, very important things here. We need to take a look on what was happening before the elections. Then we take a look on what is happening right now after the elections so that we get to the conclusion. The reason why I'm doing this is because we have seen Apostle Chiwenga has come to say, Takambozvitaura. Vanhu vakatiti. Okay. Was it not obvious that ZANU-PF rigs elections? Was it not obvious that when you are in a race, you try to convince your supporters as much as possible so that they participate in the election, so that you maximize your output? Okay, let us answer everything one by one. When we say God is in it, God is in what exactly? The scripture says, utungamiriri hwese hwakagadzwa naMwari ende utungamiriri hwese hunobva kuna Mwari. Everybody who becomes a leader is a leader because of the grace given by God. Without God, Mnangagwa won't be where he is. The fact that he is abusing the privilege he was given by God does not mean he was not placed there by God. But when you abuse the privilege given to you by God, it's taken away. Go to the story of Saul. What happened to Saul? Go to the story of Solomon. Solomon had a kingdom of 12 tribes, but 2 tribes were given to his son, and other 10 were given to another man because of disobedience. Saul was the leader, was removed from the leadership because of disobedience. But the time he was rejected by God is not the time David was installed. God's in it started when Samuel was instructed to go to the family of Jesse and anoint a king who God had found. That was the beginning of God is in it. Even Samuel had to ask, and he was told to lie by God, and he was told to say, if you are asked, tell him that you are going to give an offering. But he wasn't giving an offering. He was doing something. He was anointing a king. He went to anoint a king in the name of David. But David went back to head his father's sheep up until a day came when there was a fight between the Philistines and the Israelites. And according to the norms, the laws and traditions, the king of Israel was supposed to lead the army. Goliath was coming out asking for a man, one man. Who was that man? It was the king. Goliath was leading the Philistines, was the ruler of the Philistine people. And Goliath, as the ruler of the Philistine people, wanted a ruler from the Israelites to come out to fight him. Men for men, one-on-one, as rulers, as kings, as leaders, or as army leaders. So as the army leader was not able to go because he had been dethroned. He was simply there as an army leader physically, but spiritually was no longer the leader. On the other hand, David had to come to the rescue and asked, who is that man who is asking for a man? They were asking for a man. They were asking for a leader, for a king. And when the king arrived, nobody stopped the real king from fighting Goliath. If you go on to the issues of Saul, the house of Saul, these are Benjamites. They had the power to strike an enemy with a stone. That is the same thing which David did. He took the stone as a resemblance to Saul, that this is what you were supposed to do if you were still the king. And David defeated Goliath with a stone. How many years did David stay in the wilderness being chased by Saul? So many years. Was he not the anointed king? Was God not in it? Yes, God was in it. When did the journey of David started? It started way back. That is the reason why he had to participate in the killing of Goliath. That is the reason why he had to participate in several battles alongside Saul. Look at the battles which Saul fought alone. One of those battles were won by Jonathan, the son of Saul. Why? Jonathan had a blessing from the king, David himself. That is the reason why he had grace at a certain point in time to defeat the enemies, but the father didn't know. Look at a certain point in time when David was not there and God was silent. Saul was defeated and David came in as the king. How many times did David get to destroy Saul? But he didn't. He said, this man was put in this place by God. I'm not going to destroy him. I will let God do his thing. The election of David didn't start when Saul died. The election of David started when Saul was still alive. So to the people who are listening to me right now, you have to understand that the election of Nelson Chamisa didn't or was not supposed to start when this government will collapse. It was supposed to happen at a particular period. Being a leader from God or leading a nation does not start when you assume office. It starts when you are anointed and appointed by God. That is when it starts. So if we are to look at the people who lie more than the other, Apostle Chiwenga gave a prophecy around 2014, 2015, where he talked about the person who was going to take over the throne and described the person as someone who had not reached 40 and said by the time the process is going to start, you will have reached 40. Who is that person? Where are the prophetic timelines of Apostle Chiwenga? Should Nelson Chamisa leave the God is in it slogan? No, he cannot. One thing you have to understand is Nelson Chamisa to be alive, it's about God. It doesn't matter what Nelson Chamisa is doing. No, he spoke about Nelson Chamisa being a pastor of the AFM, leaving the AFM. Was Nelson Chamisa supposed to stay in the AFM with the kind of politics which is happening in the AFM? Was he supposed to stay there? The kind of politics which happened within the AFM is not something any reasonable man could withstand. He had to leave. Nelson Chamisa, in this case, he participated in this election simply because God wanted him to participate. You said God is God. God never fails. Did God fail to stop Nelson Chamisa from participating in this election? Did God fail? No, he didn't. I'm going to give you an example of times where God stopped the people. When Saul was on a mission to go and destroy Christians, he was stopped by God. He abandoned the mission. There is a man called Balaam. He was on a mission to go and curse the Israelites. He was stopped by God. Several times, God stopped people from doing things against his will. If it was not God's will, Nelson Chamisa would have abandoned the 2023 elections. Why did he participate in the 2023 elections? 2023 elections are the foundation of a new great Zimbabwe. It was a foundation. When you are building a house, take a look. When you do the setting out, the first thing is to go with your plan for approval. It is approved. You do the setting out. It is approved. You dig the foundation. It is approved. You put the slab. It is approved. You build the box. It is approved. You put the slab. And from there up to the wall plate, you never see the engineer coming to approve. You see him coming to approve after you have put the last brick of the wall plate. Why is it there is so much approval on the first stages? It's because these are the fundamentals. So the major why did Nelson Chamisa participate in this election? To separate men from boys. This election was meant to separate Nelson Chamisa from any other person. People were saying, Ndindi no diwa, Ndindi no diwa, Ndindi no diwa, Ndindi no diwa, Ndindi no diwa. All of them are now quiet. Everyone is now looking at Nelson Chamisa. The major question is, why is everyone after Nelson Chamisa and talking about Nelson Chamisa? Okay, you hear God. And maybe God told you about another leader who is not Nelson Chamisa. If God told you about another leader who is not Nelson Chamisa, why are you not open enough to the people to say, Nelson Chamisa will never lead Zimbabwe? Why are you saying, if Nelson Chamisa does A, B, C, D, he will be. If he doesn't do A, B, C, D, he will not? Why are you saying so? Why is it that you dismiss any other person who hears from God or who happens to know what God is planning? You know, personally, I respect every man of God who respects himself, who respects the truth as it is. Let us be honest with each other. No one is perfect in this world. No one is a saint in this world. Boycotting elections was going to be the worst mistake of the opposition. Why? How many opposition political parties were on the ballot? How many presidential candidates? If Nelson Chamisa had boycotted, these people would have gone out. They were going to get votes. People were going to vote for another person. And Mnangagwa would have won maybe by 90% or 95% of the election. What was SADC going to do? What was UN going to do? Who else was going to say this is now a crisis? Who else? Douglas Monzora, who was the opposition leader then, based on numbers of MPs, boycotted the election. What happened? You have a situation where the person with the most numbers of the MPs in parliament boycotts an election and nothing happens. It doesn't create any crisis. And Nelson Chamisa, who had less than 30 MPs in parliament, you expected him to create a crisis? How? There is no explanation. You ask these questions, they will never come to address those questions. They will never come to answer. How was boycotting going to create a political crisis? We had an election. The SADC SEOM report is enough to tell that Nelson Chamisa won this election. Is enough to tell that ZANU-PF manipulated the result. Nelson Chamisa won this election. He won this election. And if the truth is to be digged deeper, Nelson Chamisa got around 54%, and the other one had 33%. But he was given 44%. And the other one gave himself 52%. Was the correct result announced? Did he not win this election? So they will come with various and different arguments. But the truth is, Nelson Chamisa won the election. The issue was not about winning the elections or creating a crisis. The issue is about what are the timelines? What is God planning to do? What is God's plan? Who should Nelson Chamisa work with when he gets into government? Who should be the people he's working with? Is he going to work with those who are supporting gay rights? Probably no, because there is a discrepancy. There is a difference in ideology. Nelson Chamisa is saying we cannot put God and put homosexuality in one line. Other comrades are saying those are human rights. Should Nelson Chamisa work with such people? Should God allow Nelson Chamisa to work with such people? What kind of God is it? God does his things according to his will and according to his own way. What is happening in Zimbabwe is because God allowed those things to happen. No matter you are a prophet or what, you have no control of what is happening in the nation of Zimbabwe. You have no control of timelines. That is the honest truth. SADC said there was no election in Zimbabwe. That is a crisis on its own. What was going to happen next if Nelson Chamisa had boycotted the elections? There is no explanation. You'll be told, Paingozoetica crisis. Kanapatica crisis, then what? Are we not in a crisis at this moment in time? Is there no crisis in Zimbabwe? You are denying that there's a crisis in Zimbabwe at this right moment. What was the first statement from the United Nations? What was the statement from the EU? What was the statement from AU and SADC? They all gave statements that there was no election in Zimbabwe. Is that not enough to create a crisis? What more do you expect for you to say this is a crisis? So because things are being done according to the processes and procedures which were